Welcome to the Purgatorians cast interviews. In this series, you shall be able to find out more information about the cast, what other projects they are currently working on, as well as their views about the character and the show. Today we have Leif Bradshaw, who voices Victor Stamford in the show. Thank you, Leif, for joining us.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be on board for the ride. Thanks very much.
What was your initial response when you read through the synopsis of the Purgatorians and the cast of characters involved?
Well, I got the sense that this was going to be an incredibly ambitious project, to say the least. I mean, my goodness, such a long list of characters, so many heavy themes, such a dense plot. This was admittedly kind of intimidating to see being offered to me when I found out that it was possible to audition for this, but the fact that it came across my path, it almost seemed like fate, so it was certainly an exciting idea to realize that a project like this could even be possible for an independent project where voice acting was required. It excited me. I think that's the quick way to put it. It excited me.
What can you tell us of the story of the show, the themes, and such?
I mean, it's sort of a combination of Stranger in a Strange Land and Magical Destiny in terms of the general setup, but it becomes a lot more complicated than that just because of the sheer volume of characters we have. But the setup is that a young person from our world unexpectedly wakes up in a different dimension, basically, and it's a place where every 15 years a sandstorm comes along, and with only a few exceptions, everybody's life is claimed by this sandstorm. But it just so happens that our character resembles a person vaguely described in a prophecy that suggests that this status quo may be altered, whether for good or for bad, and of course there are people behind the scenes who are trying to maintain the status quo because it benefits them. Very strong themes about corruption, tyranny, oppression, abuse, things like that are throughout this thing, and we'll have a lot of characters to bond with, and, well, I guess you should try not to get too close to a lot of them. That's one of the warnings. Honestly, I really do have to warn, dear listeners, this is not going to be for the faint of heart. This is going to have some very frank depictions of abuse, murder, assault, child death, homophobia, a whole bunch of stuff that will be very uncomfortable and unsettling. But if you're prepared for that, I think you're still going to have a good time with this show because of how impactful I think the story is going to end up being, in a way to remind us of how, well, not only how good we have it, but also how there are going to be some eerie parallels to the injustices of the real world that we live in right now within this, and parallels most likely to people that some of you listening might even know, either from your own point of view or from the point of view of someone you care about, or even someone you might not know, but maybe should care about all the same, because frankly, we should care more about the people who suffer under cruel and unjust systems. We need to be more willing to fight back however we can, no matter how helpless we feel. And I hope the depictions of such horrors in this will help inspire people to think about how important that is in our own world.
In your opinion, why would people want to listen to this show? What would keep them coming back for the next episode?
I think the big draw is that there's just so many characters to juggle, and that is an inherently fascinating concept if they're written as well as, in my opinion, Paul has. But also, my goodness, I love how this taps on so many heavy themes of prejudice and injustice that, yes, this is in a world that's different than our own, and yet it's going to feel so uncomfortably familiar in terms of the depths of human cruelty that we'll be experiencing with some of these characters. And honestly, sometimes it's important to be reminded about how severe that is, and how even if maybe you personally aren't experiencing anything anywhere close to that harsh in your own life, somebody somewhere is, and maybe it's important that you care about that. The fact that these characters are as interesting as they are is definitely gonna, I think, keep people engaged enough to want to know what will happen next with where this goes. I hope that those who get engaged with this will grow to like these characters in such a way where they will hope against hope that there will be some sort of justice for them in the end. But something tells me they're gonna have to get ready for some disappointment.
Why did you want to take part in such a large project?
Honestly, why wouldn't I? I mean, the offer was right there. it was a possibility to get to work with such a large and diverse cast of people who could potentially be, well, really awesome people. I tend to have pretty good experiences with people I meet in the world of performing arts, thankfully. And on top of that, the fact that it just had such a scope and such a weight, it felt wrong to turn down an opportunity if an opportunity like this had presented itself, quite frankly.
Tell the viewers something about your character you are voicing.
Well, without going too far into spoilers, there is a prison arc in this narrative, and my role of Victor Stamford is as the warden of this prison, or rather the governor, quite frankly, considering the amount of people that he overseers and how much he feels like he must rule with an iron fist. He's an extremely orthodox law and order thinker about his position. Like, he's not necessarily evil by any means, but he is definitely in a place morally where you know you probably shouldn't try to be friends with this guy. He definitely doesn't see the good in the people that he looks over for the most part. He very much, I think he has to believe, for the sake of his own emotional sanity, that the people he is in charge of are a lost cause, and that results in him being very kind of cold towards other people, but he's also very professional. You know that this is the kind of person who is in charge of things, and you do not want to cross him. He may not necessarily be scary per se, but he definitely gives you the idea that you shouldn't give him a reason to frighten you, because he totally could. He's definitely someone who could ruin you if you crossed him a certain way, precisely because he knows precisely how much power he has, but also how fragile that power can be, and therefore he wants to make sure you know that his position is not to be questioned.
What do you feel will be the hardest part about bringing your character to life?
I think there are two things that are going to be hard for bringing this character to life, and it's kind of hard to decide which is going to be the hardest part about bringing Victor to life. I would say that it's either just the fact that I genuinely have very little experience as an actor, so I hope that I can not only do an alright job pretending to be something I'm not, because I would not call myself a strict disciplinarian or particularly authoritative in real life. I barely even enjoy being a leader, quite frankly. So not only do I have to convincingly convey that, but also do so in a way that only feels like an act within the context of Victor trying and failing to convey something to somebody else, if that ever is demanded of him with some of these lines as far as Paul's concerned. And the other is just the whole superficial thing of the voice that I am using for Victor is considerably deeper than my natural speaking voice, so I also similarly have to make that not sound too fake to someone who's simply listening to a recording of me as Victor. So my hope is that I can make that voice good and resonant, because quite frankly, with what little we get of Victor, I really do think he can leave quite the impression, and I really hope I can make that happen.
If your character is to die in the show, how would you want this to happen?
Oh, considering what we later learn about Victor, I would love it if it was in the form of a prison riot, because it would be such poetic justice on his part.
If you could have chosen any character, male or female, who would it be, and why?
Well, if we're ignoring gender boundaries or anything like that, maybe Elena. I don't know, something tells me that it would be an interesting experience to try and get into the mindset of someone who's clearly up to no good, but you're not exactly sure what's motivating it, whether it's sadism or something else, you know? Not to mention, I do like the dynamic that we do get with the time that she interacts with Victor in their scene together. I'm really looking forward to when the time comes to record that scene.
How much input do you have in the show? And does the creator of the show keep you informed about the decisions being made?
I would say my input is relatively small, but there's no way I have really the right to be in any way bitter about that. I mean, I'm voicing one of the smaller characters in this show, but also part of why I remain excited about that fact regardless is the fact that I can tell this is a character that can leave quite the impression if I play my cards right. And indeed, Paul makes sure that I am very well informed. He's been so kind and helpful to me whenever I wasn't sure about stuff, that I wanted to figure out. He was always so quick to respond and very to the point, incredibly helpful, quite frankly. I think he's proving to be a fantastic leader on a project like this, and that makes me very happy, because even when you're playing a more minor role in a project this ambitious, you want to make sure that you're not feeling too left behind in the middle of it all, and Paul does a really good job at that. So if there's any input I have, it's mainly in the form of just wanting to make sure that whatever I do have in mind that's a little bit more personal isn't too much in conflict with what Paul has in mind. After all, he's the one in charge.
What inspired you to become a voice actor?
Oh, where to even start? I guess it starts practically from the beginning of life on my part. I mean, ever since I was a very small child, I was obsessed with watching so much entertainment media, and I remember being very determined to not only memorize the scripts of the things that I enjoyed, but to also do my best to match the timbre, the pacing, the articulation of how the actors said their lines. And of course, as I got older, I learned that you in fact could earn a living lending your voice to character portrayals, to perform as an actor just with your voice. I mean, my goodness, that sounds like one of the most fun job possibilities in the world as far as I'm concerned. It was just something that I always wanted to make sure I gave myself the option to try for. I mean, voice acting always seemed like an incredibly exciting opportunity to get to just do a lot of fun things. I mean, my goodness, every time I see interviews from many of the people who've gotten well-established footholds in voice acting to the point that they can comfortably get by on it, they seem like they're just having a blast. Of course I would want to be a part of that as someone who's naturally already a bit of a ham, not gonna lie. So that's probably the simplest way I could put it, but I could keep going on and on about this one.
Is this your first show, or have you done other voice acting projects?
I mean, technically, I have recorded my voice for the sake of vocal performance that didn't just involve singing for a couple of personal projects here and there, but it was not at all with the expectation that it was going to end up leading to anything. So, I suppose in the official sense, yes, this is my first show. This is, in fact, one of the first things I even auditioned for as an aspiring voice actor, believe it or not. I don't completely lack performance experience by any means. I've been a singer for a really, really long time. Since I was 9 years old, I've been publicly singing, and I remain a singer for hire largely to this day. And I've also done a couple of performances on stage that required me to have a little bit of acting ability, but quite frankly, not to the point where I felt like I even knew if I was capable of acting at all. I just knew that I loved to mimic voices that I thought were fun to mimic, and the fact that that was something that you could make a living doing just sounded like an awful lot of fun, so I joined the Casting Call Club website to submit auditions for any projects who were looking for voiceover people, just in case anyone was willing to try me, and my goodness, I am so incredibly honored that Paul took a chance on this nobody with zero experience. My goodness. I really cannot stress enough how honored I am about that. It's so incredibly wonderful.
In your opinion, what separates the show from others that you have done?
Well, for one, almost all of my performance experience involves singing, and pretty much none of it involves acting, so there's not much separating to do apart from just the fact that this is an opportunity to voice act, which is rather new to me. But in terms of stuff that I have gotten involved in terms of what it asks performance-wise, even independent of that whole idea, this is definitely the most dramatic thing I've ever gotten involved in. The closest I ever got to this was I once did a dramatic reading of The Telltale Heart when I was 14 for a presentation event. But this is a whole deeper level than that, as far as I'm concerned. Like, this is me jumping into the deep end after barely learning the basics of how to swim, quite frankly. So, what separates this show from other shows that I've done is the fact that it both involves me having to really give voice acting a go, despite it being so new to me still, but also the fact that I just didn't think one of my first opportunities would involve going this far in terms of having to think about, the grander emotions behind something in this kind of sense. I didn't think it would start with being involved in a project that, tackles themes of prejudice and injustice and things like that. That, again, I can really hardly believe that Paul was willing to take a chance on me like that, but I cannot stress enough how honored I am.
Any plans for after the show ends?
I suppose as far as voice acting goes, my plans for after this ends is to hope that I can leverage my experience through this to get more work as a voice actor and continue to expand my portfolio, my experience, my resume. And who knows, maybe if I'm lucky enough, my work as a voice actor might get the attention of an agency and I might be able to get even more work still as a voice actor. That'd be pretty awesome if that happens. I'm sure that most of us involved in this project have similar dreams if they have yet to have come true for them. And yeah, count me in with that crowd.
Where can people find you if they are interested in your work and want to know more, or possibly hire you?
Well, if you're ever around my hometown, you can certainly find me with relative ease. I'm a frequent performer at the local jazz club in my hometown, and I also am a session singer for hire who assists with several different classical choirs and things like that. And also, I just regularly show up at several other people's shows because there are lots of great performers where I live whom I love and respect, and sometimes they're kind enough to offer me a special chance to join in as part of their shows too. It's pretty awesome. So, as far as person-to-person interaction goes, that's how you can find me. If you know of a venue called Herman's Jazz Club, chances are you'll find me there. But as far as where you can find me on my socials, alas, I'm still learning how to be particularly active in that realm. I'm still learning how to do any sort of self-promotion that is at the pace expected for people online. But that said, if you look up my name on Facebook or Instagram, places like that, there's a good chance you're going to find me there without too much difficulty.
Imagine you are your character. Any final words from them to the viewers?
Don't expect any special treatment from me. That is not how I run things here.
Thank you, Leif, for joining us, and I wish you and your character every success in both the show and your future roles. If you at home would like to take a look at the other projects Leif Bradshaw has worked on, is currently working on, and for any further information, please check the description of the video. If you're looking forward to the start of the show, and this has piqued your interest, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below to let us know. If you would like to support the show, Patreon members will receive 1 week ad-free and uncensored early access to all shows, amongst other benefits such as exclusive director and cast commentary videos, and the ability to be credited in the description if you would like to submit your reactions and they are chosen for a montage video. As well as much more, please feel free to look at the rewards and the tiers there. Next week we have Sapphire Escueta joining us, who voices Sophia Anderson, to give us their opinions on their character, the show, and other projects they have worked on. I hope you will join us. Until then, goodbye.